Someone asks you for something. You don't want to do it. You know you don't want to do it. You feel it clearly, and you say yes anyway. Not because you changed your mind, not because you reconsidered, because something in you, faster than thought, decided that saying no was not an option. And if this happens to you regularly, it's not because you're too nice. It's because your brain learned somewhere along the way that saying no was dangerous. People who can't say no are almost universally described as generous, helpful, kind, and they are those things. But the research tells a more complicated story. People-pleasing, the clinical term for chronic inability to say no, is not primarily driven by generosity. It is driven by fear, specifically the fear of disapproval, rejection, conflict, and the loss of connection. The yes isn't given because it feels good to give. It's given because the no feels genuinely threatening. And that distinction between generosity and fear changes everything about how you understand it. Here's where it starts. For most people who can't say no as adults, the pattern began in childhood, in environments where a child's needs were consistently deprioritized, where disagreement brought punishment, withdrawal, or emotional unpredictability, where being good, compliant, agreeable, never difficult, was the condition for receiving love and safety. The child didn't decide to become a people pleaser. They learned that maintaining other people's approval was the safest strategy available. Psychologists call this fawn response, the fourth stress response alongside fight, flight, and freeze. First identified by therapist Pete Walker, it describes the pattern of appeasing others to avoid threat. The fawn response is not weakness. It was adaptive. It worked in the environment where it was built. The problem is that the brain carries it forward into adult relationships, workplaces, and situations where the original threat no longer exists. The yes keeps coming, long after the danger has passed. Here's the unexpected layer. People who can't say no are often highly empathic, unusually sensitive to the emotional states of others. And here's what that means neurologically. When someone asks them for something and they consider saying no, they don't just anticipate the other person's disappointment abstractly. They feel it in their own nervous system, as if it were their own discomfort. Neuroscientists studying mirror neuron activity in high empathy individuals find that the emotional pain of others activates the same regions as their own pain. For someone with this level of empathic sensitivity, saying no doesn't just feel unkind. It feels like causing pain that they themselves experience. The yes is not just about keeping the other person happy. It's about stopping their own discomfort. This is why people pleasers often describe saying no as physically uncomfortable. Tightness in the chest, anxiety, a feeling of wrongness that doesn't match the situation. Their body is responding to a threat that isn't there. Here's the layer that makes it personal. For many people who can't say no, being helpful isn't just something they do. It's who they are, their sense of self, their value, their place in relationships, their reason for being included is built on being the person who helps, who shows up, who never lets anyone down. Psychologists call this enmeshment of identity and role, when a person's sense of self becomes inseparable from the function they perform for others. And here's what makes it a trap. If your identity is built on always saying yes, then saying no doesn't just feel unhelpful. It feels like a threat to who you are. Saying no means risking not just someone's disappointment, but your own sense of self. This is why people pleasers often feel a specific kind of anxiety when they do manage to say no, even when the no was completely reasonable. Not guilt about the other person, anxiety about themselves, about whether they are still the person they think they are. So here's what's actually happening when someone can't say no. Their brain learned early that approval equals safety and built a fawn response that never switched off. Their empathy is so high that other people's discomfort becomes their own, making no feel physically painful, and their identity is so tied to being needed that saying no threatens not just a relationship, but themselves. None of this is kindness. It's a protection system running long past the point where protection was needed. And here's the cost that nobody talks about. People who can't say no don't just lose time and energy, they lose themselves. Every yes given from fear, instead of genuine desire, is a small act of self-abandonment. Over time, the accumulation of unwanted yeses creates resentment, exhaustion, and a quiet but persistent feeling of not knowing who you actually are when you're not being useful to someone. The kindest thing a people pleaser can do for themselves and for everyone around them is learn to say no. Not because no is selfish, but because yes means nothing if it can never be no. If you recognize yourself in this, the next time you feel the pull to say yes when you want to say no, pause. Not to force a no, but to ask, is this yes coming from genuine desire, or from the part of you that still believes your value depends on never disappointing anyone? Both questions matter, and the second one, for most people who can't say no, is the one that has never been asked. If this video described you, or someone you love, share it with them. And subscribe, because every week we go deeper into the behaviors, the patterns, the things about being human that nobody explains.